She married a simple man, never imagining he was a millionaire in disguise. Jessica Coleman beamed as she walked down the makeshift aisle at Mrs. Parker's ranch. The wildflowers and Christmas lights strung through the trees created a rustic, enchanting setting for her simple wedding to Ryan, the mechanic who had stolen her heart. That's when she noticed something odd in the front row. A man in a suit, completely out of place at the casual event, was staring intently at Ryan. When their eyes met, the stranger quickly looked away and pretended to fiddle with his phone. Jessica brushed off her concern. Nothing would ruin her. Big day. Little did she know, this was just the first clue that her groom wasn't exactly who he claimed to be. "Wow, Jess, you look stunning," exclaimed Amber, her childhood best friend, adjusting the train of her simple yet elegant dress. "Thanks, Amb. I still can't believe I'm getting married. I met Ryan less than a year ago when my old car broke down on the road to Bloomfield. Only you would fall for a mechanic covered in grease." Amber laughed, though her voice was warm. "Though I have to admit, he's gorgeous and clearly crazy about you." Jessica smiled, remembering the day she met Ryan. She had been driving home from the elementary school where she taught when her Beetle 1978 stalled on the dirt road. After nearly 2 hours waiting for help, an old pickup truck pulled up beside her. Out stepped a tall man with curly hair and an easy smile, wearing an oil-stained denim jumpsuit. "Car trouble, teacher?" he asked, and she was surprised he knew her profession. "How did you know I'm a teacher?" "The stack of notebooks in the back seat and the Twain Elementary School sticker on your window," he pointed out, grinning. "I'm good at noticing details." He fixed her car right there, refusing payment and saying only, "Pay me back with coffee sometime." A week later, she showed up at his auto shop in downtown Bloomfield with a thermos of coffee and 2 slices of cornbread. From then on, they were inseparable. 6 months of dating later came the marriage proposal. Nothing extravagant, just dinner on the porch of the simple house he rented, with twinkling lights and a thin silver ring. "It's not gold, but I promise I'll give you something better one day," he said, almost sheepish. Jessica replied that she cared about the meaning, not the material. "Jess, we're ready," her father, Mr. Wilson, called, bringing her back to the present. "Sweetheart, you know it's not too late to back out, right? Marriage isn't a joke." "Dad," Jessica scolded, straightening the retired teacher's crooked tie. "We've talked about this. I just think it's strange this guy came out of nowhere. A mechanic, no family around, living in a rental." Mr. Wilson lowered his voice. "He didn't even want a bachelor party. What kind of man doesn't want a bachelor party?" "A decent one, Dad. Come on, the music's already started." As she walked down the grassy aisle, Jessica saw Ryan waiting under the flower arch. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a clean, pressed denim shirt, jeans, and boots. His eyes sparkled in a way that made her heart race. In that moment, all the doubts her father had planted vanished. The ceremony was short and heartfelt. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Jessica felt she had finally found her place in the world, in the arms of this simple man who fixed cars for a living. At the small reception that followed, with barbecue and live music from a local band, Jessica noticed the man in the suit again, now speaking quietly with Ryan in a corner. Her husband looked tense, gesturing subtly but clearly irritated. As he approached, Ryan quickly changed the subject and introduced the man as a client from the auto shop. "Congratulations on your marriage, ma'am," the man said, extending his hand. "Your husband is an exceptional mechanic." There was something odd about the pause before the word mechanic, as if he had considered saying something else. "Thank you," Jessica replied, suspicious. "He really does have a magic touch when it comes to fixing things." "No doubt," the man smiled cryptically. "Well, I won't keep you. Mr. Montgomery, remember our talk about the imported engine? We have a deadline to meet." When the man walked away, Jessica asked, "Who is he really, Ryan? He doesn't seem like the type who visits your shop." "Just a wealthy client, sweetheart," Ryan answered, kissing her forehead. "He has a vintage collector's car that's giving him trouble. Nothing to worry about." Later that night, when the few guests had left, Ryan surprised her by handing her a small box. "A wedding gift," he said, suddenly shy. Inside the box was a delicate pearl necklace that, even to her untrained eye, looked incredibly valuable. "Ryan, this must have cost a fortune. How did you—" "It was my grandmother's," he replied quickly. "The only valuable thing my family left me. I wanted you to have it." Jessica hugged him, moved as he fastened the necklace around her neck. Something about that story didn't ring true. He had always said he had no family and grew up in orphanages, but the emotion of the moment made her forget the contradiction. Their honeymoon was in a cabin by the Lakeside Dam in Pennsylvania, a simple but charming place, which Ryan said he got through an old favor. The 4 days they spent there were magical, except for a few odd moments. Ryan taking calls and stepping away to answer them, a locked briefcase of documents he guarded closely, and the surprising knowledge of financial investments he displayed while watching the news. "How do you know so much about the stock market?" she asked, surprised, after he explained in detail why a certain company was falling. "Oh, you pick these things up listening to wealthy clients talk," he replied, quickly changing the channel. "Want to watch that soap opera you like?" When they returned to Bloomfield, they settled into the house Ryan had rented, a bit removed from the center. Jessica was happy to discover her husband had painted and furnished a small room as her office, where she could prepare lessons and grade papers. "I know how much you like your own space," he said. It was in that very office 2 weeks after the wedding that Jessica found the first strange piece of mail, a letter addressed to Ray Blackwell Montgomery, but at their correct home address. Thinking it was a mistake, she was about to return it to the mailman when she noticed the logo on the envelope was from an international investment bank. "Sweetheart, a letter came for someone named Ray Blackwell. Must be a mail mix-up," she mentioned during dinner. Ryan nearly choked on the cheap wine they were drinking. "Oh, that." He cleared his throat, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "It's a nickname, really. My full name is Ryan Blackwell Montgomery. Sometimes I just use Ray Blackwell to simplify some business dealings." "Business? What kind of business would a mechanic have with an international bank?" "It's about financing to expand the shop," he replied, getting up to wash the dishes. "I'm thinking of opening a branch in Pittsburgh, since we have some clients from there." Jessica accepted the explanation, though something still bothered her. Ryan had never mentioned expansion plans before. In fact, he had always talked about the shop as a small family-run business, where he worked only with his sole employee, young Danny. The following days brought more strangeness. A phone call from someone asking for Mr. Blackwell regarding an international transfer. A bank statement accidentally found with amounts a small-town mechanic could never accumulate. And the most disturbing, a passport with Ryan's photo but the name Ray Blackwell Montgomery, hidden in a false bottom of the closet drawer. Jessica began to watch her husband with new eyes. How had she not noticed the small details before? His knowledge of wines when they picked a bottle at the supermarket. The way he spoke fluent English with a tourist who showed up with a broken-down car. How his friends always seemed to treat him with a strange deference for a simple mechanic. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. One Wednesday morning while Ryan was at the auto shop, the doorbell rang. Jessica opened the door to find an elegant woman, around 50 years old, wearing a flawless pantsuit and carrying a leather briefcase. "Good morning, I'm looking for Mr. Ray Blackwell," the woman said with a professional smile. "I'm Deborah Hamilton from Hamilton & Partners." "My husband isn't here," Jessica replied cautiously. "Can I help you?" "Your husband?" The woman seemed genuinely surprised. "Forgive me, but Mr. Blackwell is married." The disbelief in her voice felt like a slap to Jessica's face. "Yes, for almost a month now. I'm Jessica Montgomery. And you are—" "Mr. Blackwell's attorney," the woman quickly recovered. "I have some documents regarding the foundation's investments that require urgent signatures." "Foundation? What?" "Foundation?" The attorney realized her mistake and backtracked. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps I'm looking for the wrong person." She handed over a business card. "If you could let your husband know I stopped by, I'd appreciate it." As the woman drove off in her imported car, Jessica stood frozen in the doorway, the luxurious card trembling slightly in her hand. Deborah Hamilton, Senior Attorney, Hamilton & Partners, legal consulting for high net worth individuals. That night, Jessica couldn't hide her unease. Ryan noticed immediately that something was wrong. "What's wrong, love?" "Problems at school." "No," she hesitated, then decided to confront him directly. "An attorney came looking for you today, Deborah Hamilton. She mentioned something about a foundation and investments." Ryan's face visibly paled. "What else did she say?" "Nothing, because I didn't know how to respond when she was shocked to find out you're married." Jessica felt angry tears forming in her eyes. "Who are you really, Ryan, or should I call you Ray Blackwell?" He sank heavily onto the couch, running his hands through his curly hair. "Jess, I can explain." "Then explain," she nearly shouted. "Explain the fake passport, the secret calls, the money, this attorney for high net worth individuals. Are you some kind of criminal running from the law?" "No." He stood up, looking offended. "I've never done anything illegal in my life, I swear." "Then who are you?" Jessica pressed, tears now freely falling. Ryan took a deep breath, as if making a difficult decision. "My real name is Ray Blackwell Montgomery. He hesitated. "I'm the owner and CEO of the Blackwell Group." Jessica stared at him, disbelieving. "The Blackwell Group? The car dealership chains? The luxury resorts?" "Yes," he confirmed, seeming relieved to finally tell the truth. "My family founded the group 3 generations ago. I took over after my father passed 5 years ago." "That doesn't make sense." Jessica shook her head, confused. "Why would a billionaire businessman pretend to be a mechanic in a small town?" Ryan sat beside her, trying to hold her hands, but Jessica pulled away. "After my father passed, I found out the family business wasn't exactly what I thought. There was so much pressure, so many sharks circling, people just after my money. I had a disastrous marriage with a socialite who only wanted my fortune. When we split, I decided I needed time to rediscover who I was without the weight of the Blackwell name." "So you came to Bloomfield for what? An anthropological experiment? Live like a simpleton so you could go back to your luxury life and tell your rich friends how the poor live?" "No," he protested, looking genuinely hurt. "I came because I've always loved cars, always enjoyed fixing things with my own hands. My dad taught me mechanics when I was a kid before we got rich. The shop was supposed to be just a temporary refuge, a place where I could think and decide what to do with my life. And then you met me and decided to include me in this charade." Jessica felt her heart tighten. "What was I? A social experiment? A fling before you went back to your real world?" "When I met you, everything changed." Ryan tried to hold her hands again, and this time she let him. "For the first time someone cared about me, not my money or status. You fell for the grease-covered man who fixed your car, and I fell for the dedicated teacher who brought cornbread to a simple mechanic." Jessica tried to process it all. Part of her wanted to believe, but the betrayal felt too heavy. "Why didn't you tell me after we got serious? Why marry me while keeping this lie?" "I was scared," he admitted, lowering his gaze. "Scared that if you knew who I really was, everything would change. People change when they find out I have money, Jess. They always do." "So you didn't trust me?" She stood up, feeling betrayed. "We built an entire relationship on a lie because you assumed I'd be like your gold-digging ex-wife." "That's not—" "I need time," Jessica interrupted, grabbing her purse. "I'm going to my mom's. Don't follow me, don't call me. I need to think." When she arrived at the modest house where she'd grown up, Jessica collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing out the whole story. To her surprise, Mrs. Wilson didn't seem as shocked as she'd expected. "I had a feeling there was something different about that boy," Mrs. Wilson said, brewing a calming tea. "Too polished to just be a mechanic. And that gift he gave you last Christmas? An imported cookware set that must have cost 3 months of his salary. Why didn't you say anything? Honey, he made you happy. And then—" Mrs. Wilson hesitated. "Then what, Mom?" "After he helped your dad with his treatment, I figured he might have his reasons for not telling you everything." Jessica felt like the floor had vanished beneath her. "What treatment? What are you talking about?" Mrs. Wilson explained. "That 6 months earlier, when Mr. Wilson needed an expensive heart surgery their insurance wouldn't cover, Ryan had quietly paid for everything, making them promise not to tell Jessica. Your father's too proud. He'd never accept help outright. Ryan made it look like a hospital assistance program. It seemed odd at the time, but he swore it was legit, that he was just using connections he had. In the days that followed, Jessica uncovered more. Like the scholarship her niece had mysteriously received for med school, coincidentally after Ryan met her at a family dinner. Or how her parents' mortgage had been paid off by a debt restructuring program no one else in town seemed to know about. Meanwhile, Ryan respected her request for space, sending just one message. "When you're ready to talk, I'll be waiting. I love you, no matter what you decide." After a week at her parents' house, Jessica decided she needed answers. Not about who Ryan was, she knew that now, but about why he had chosen her, why he had chosen that double life. She sent a simple message: "Tomorrow 10 a.m. at the place where we met." The next morning, she drove her Beetle to the stretch of road where her car had broken down the year before. To her surprise, Ryan was already there, not in his old pickup, but in a simple, unassuming car. He wore jeans and a t-shirt, looking like the same man she had fallen for. "Thank you for coming," he said as she stepped out of the car. "I need the whole truth, Ryan. No more lies." He nodded and began to tell his full story. How he had grown up in a wealthy family, but always felt out of place in a world of extravagance. How his first marriage to a socialite had been a disaster, with his ex-wife only interested in his money and status. How after a messy separation, he had decided to take a year off to reflect on his life. At first, it was just meant to be a temporary retreat. "I've always loved mechanics ever since my grandfather taught me as a kid. I opened the shop using a partly true name, planning to stay just a few months. Then I met you and everything changed. Why didn't you tell me when things got serious between us? Because for the first time in my life, someone loved me for who I was, not what I had," he answered, emotion clear in his voice. "Every day with you felt more real than my entire life before. I was afraid of losing that." "So how long did you plan to keep up this charade? A year, 5? Would we have had kids who also didn't know who their father really was?" Ryan looked down. "I didn't think that far ahead. I was living day by day trying to find the right moment. The truth is, I fell in love not just with you, but with the life we had. For the first time, my achievements were mine, not my money's." Jessica felt her anger fading, replaced by deep sadness. "You don't see that by lying you took away my right to choose, to decide whether I wanted to be part of this complicated story." "You're right," he admitted. "It was selfish of me. I was so happy, so fulfilled. I didn't want to risk losing it, but I see now that I built our relationship on shaky ground." "What happened to the shop?" Jessica asked, remembering the business he seemed to love so much. "It's still running. Danny's taking care of it while I sort out this situation. Actually, I have plans to expand it, turn it into a vocational training center for young people. It's always been my dream to teach mechanics to those who never had the chance." Something about the way his eyes lit up when he talked about the project touched Jessica. It was the same spark she saw when he fixed a particularly tricky engine, or when they planned special lessons together for struggling students. "Why was the lawyer surprised to find out you're married?" "Because officially, in the corporate world, I'm still single. Only my personal assistant and now that lawyer know about my life here. The marriage was registered under Ryan Montgomery's name, not Ray Blackwell. Legally valid, but separate from my other identity." "This is so confusing," Jessica sighed, running her hands over her face. "I know, and I promise to fix everything however you want," he said, taking a cautious step forward. "If you want to annul the marriage, I'll understand. If you want to stay married to Ryan Montgomery, the mechanic, we can make that work. And if..." He hesitated. If you want to see my other life, be part of it. We can start over." No lies this time. Jessica studied him for a long moment. The man before her was the same one who had fixed her car, who had proposed with a simple wedding band, who had made her feel like the most loved woman in the world. But he was also a stranger, a powerful businessman with an entire life she knew nothing about. "I need to know the whole man, Ryan, before I decide anything. No more fragments or half-truths." A week later, Jessica took leave from school and accompanied Ryan to New York City. He took her to the imposing headquarters of the Blackwell Group, where he was greeted with deference by everyone. He introduced her simply as "my wife Jessica," with no explanations or apologies. In the president's office, Jessica saw photos of Ryan with politicians, famous business people, even celebrities. In one, he appeared younger, standing beside an older man with the same smile. "My father," Ryan explained. "He built most of the empire. I just kept it running." For 3 days, Jessica saw the other side of her husband, the assertive executive who led meetings with quiet authority, the philanthropist who discreetly supported various charitable foundations, the man who, even amid luxury, always seemed slightly out of place, as if wearing borrowed clothes. In the mansion he kept as his official residence, Jessica felt intimidated by the enormous rooms and impersonal decor. There was no warmth, no life in that place. "I'm hardly ever here," Ryan confessed, noticing her discomfort. "I keep it for official receptions and because my mother loved this house, but it's not a home." At the end of the trip, staying in a luxurious hotel suite, Jessica finally asked, "Why Bloomfield, of all places? Why choose a small town in Pennsylvania?" Ryan smiled, a melancholy smile she had never seen before. "Because I spent the best years of my childhood there. Before we became wealthy, we lived in a small house near the town square. My father had a little auto shop where he taught me everything about cars. When I went back last year, no one recognized me. I was just a boy when we left almost 25 years ago." Jessica processed this, all the pieces finally falling into place. "So, the auto shop. It's more than a cover or a hobby. It's a connection to who I really am, to my roots. When I'm there fixing cars, I'm Mr. James's son, the mechanic, not the billionaire CEO, not the Blackwell heir, just Ryan." Back in Bloomfield, Jessica still hadn't made a final decision. She returned to her classes while Ryan reopened the auto shop. They talked daily, sharing occasional meals, trying to find a new balance. It was during this time that Jessica began noticing changes at the shop. New equipment was installed. An attached shed was renovated into a classroom. Young people from the outskirts of town started coming, learning basic mechanics. "What's happening here?" she asked one afternoon when she visited. "The vocational center I told you about," Ryan answered, wiping his hands on a rag. "We're starting small. 10 students per class, 3 classes a week. Danny helps me with the hands-on lessons. And no one suspects? The simple mechanic suddenly investing so much money? The project is officially funded by the Blackwell Foundation," he smiled. "One of the shop's wealthy clients was impressed with our work and decided to support the initiative. At least, that's what everyone thinks." Jessica couldn't help but smile. There was a certain poetry to the arrangement. At the end of their first month apart, Jessica received an unexpected visitor in her classroom. An elegant woman, about 60, knocked softly on the open door. "Teacher Jessica? I'm Rebecca Blackwell, Ray's mother." Jessica stood up, surprised and nervous. "Mrs. Blackwell, Please call me Rebecca." The woman smiled kindly. "Could we talk for a bit?" At the coffee shop near the school, Rebecca explained she had come on her own, without Ryan knowing. "My son is hurting, though he tries not to show it. He truly loves you, you know." "He lied to me for an entire year," Jessica replied, though without hostility. "Yes, and that was wrong," Rebecca agreed. "But I'd like you to understand a little more about the life he's had." Rebecca shared how her husband, James, had started as a simple mechanic in Bloomfield, how they'd moved to New York City after he invented an engine component that revolutionized the industry, how sudden wealth had changed their lives but never James's heart. "My husband taught Ray to fix cars as soon as he could hold a screwdriver. He said it was important for him to know the value of manual work, even if he'd never need to work. To live." Jessica listened, fascinated, to the Blackwell family story, how James, even after becoming a successful businessman, never abandoned his passion for mechanics, how, after his passing, Ray had felt pressured to be someone he wasn't entirely. "The shop in Bloomfield isn't a lie, Jessica," Rebecca held her hands. "It's the place where my son reconnects with himself, with the memory of the father he loved so much. And you, she smiled tenderly, you're the first person who's loved the man he truly is, not the name or the fortune he carries. That night, Jessica went to the auto shop. It was past 8, but she knew she'd find Ryan there. He always worked late, especially when troubled. As expected, he was hunched over the engine of an old car, hands greasy, hair disheveled, completely absorbed in his work. For a moment, she just watched from the doorway. This was the man she'd met, the man she'd fallen for. "Need some help?" she finally asked. Ryan turned, surprised and happy to see her. "Jess, He looked at his dirty hands. "I'm a mess." "I know," she smiled, stepping closer. "I met your mother today." "My mom was here." He seemed genuinely shocked. "She didn't tell me. She told me about your father, how he taught you mechanics, how this shop is a way to keep him alive in you." Ryan lowered his eyes, moved. He'd loved this place. Simple, honest, useful to the community. Jessica grabbed a clean rag from the counter and handed it to him. He began wiping his hands automatically. "Your mom also told me about your first marriage, how your ex-wife made the divorce public, how she used the press to try and extort more money. I didn't want you to know about those ugly things," he murmured. "But I needed to." Jessica touched his face gently. "I needed to understand why you were so afraid to reveal who you really are." For a moment, they stood in silence, just looking at each other. Then Jessica made a decision that had been growing in her heart. "I want to know both sides of you, Ryan, the mechanic and the businessman. I don't want you to abandon any part of who you are." "What are you saying?" he asked, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "I'm saying I want my husband back. But this time I want the whole man, no secrets, no half-truths." Ryan hugged her, ignoring the grease still staining his hands that might dirty her dress. "I promise I'll never hide anything from you again," he whispered into her hair. "We'll be partners in everything, in wealth and in simplicity." In the months that followed, the couple found a new balance. Jessica continued teaching at the elementary school, refusing to abandon the career she loved, even though she no longer needed to work financially. Ryan divided his time between managing the Blackwell Group, now mostly delegated to trusted executives, and the vocational training center he had created from the auto shop. They bought a larger house in Bloomfield, comfortable but without extravagance. Ryan traveled to New York City a few times a month for in-person meetings, often accompanied by Jessica, who gradually got to know that other world. On one of these trips, they attended a charity event for the Blackwell Foundation. Jessica, wearing the pearl necklace she had received as a wedding gift, felt out of place among so many wealthy and influential people. "Relax," Ryan whispered in her ear. "Half these people are just as uncomfortable as you, they're just better at hiding it." It was at this event that Jessica met Victoria, Ryan's ex-wife, a stunning woman who looked her up and down with a condescending glance. "So you're the new Mrs. Blackwell," Victoria said with a fake smile. "Ryan always had peculiar taste." "Actually, I'm Jessica Montgomery," she replied calmly. "I kept my maiden name. And yes, Ryan has excellent taste. He chose someone who loves him for the man he is, not his bank account." Victoria flushed, with anger, but kept her forced smile. "Sweetheart, they all say that at first, but when the romance fades, the money remains. That's why we're all here, isn't it?" "No, Victoria," Ryan interjected, having overheard the conversation as he approached. "You're here because you got an invite using your connections. Jessica is here because she's my wife and partner. And unlike you, she never needed a stylist to have class." The unpleasant episode showed Jessica just how superficial and fake the world Ryan had grown up in could be. She understood better why he valued the authenticity of the relationships he had built in Bloomfield so much. A year after the revelation, the Ryan Montgomery Vocational Training Center, its official name without Blackwell, had already trained over 100 young people in basic and advanced mechanics. Many found jobs at local auto shops and dealerships, while others went on to technical colleges with scholarships from the Blackwell Foundation. Inspired by her husband's example, Jessica created a parallel tutoring program for the center's students. "It's not enough to know how to fix cars," she told them. You need to calculate budgets, communicate well with customers, and manage a business. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, as they relaxed on their porch watching the sunset, Jessica asked a question she had been thinking about for a while. Do you ever regret it? Creating this double life, coming to Bloomfield, complicating everything so much? Ryan thought for a moment before answering. I regret not being honest with you from the start, but I'll never regret coming here, opening the auto shop, or finding you. He laced his fingers through hers. You know what my father used to say? That a rich man who's never worked with his hands doesn't know the real value of things. He sounds like a wise man. He was, and he'd be proud to see what we're building here. Not just the center, but our life. A life that means something. Beyond money or status. Jessica smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Who would have thought I, a public school teacher, would end up married to one of the richest men in the country? And who would have thought I, a billionaire in the auto industry, would find true happiness fixing old cars in a small town? They laughed together, marveling at how their lives had taken unexpected but perfectly right turns. Over time, the couple's story became well known in Bloomfield. Some were shocked, others impressed, and many were initially skeptical. But seeing that Ryan remained the same approachable mechanic and that Jessica continued teaching with her usual dedication, the community accepted them as they were. The vocational training center thrived, expanding into other technical areas, beyond auto repair. Ryan used his business connections to secure internships and job placements for graduates. Companies in the Blackwell Group began prioritizing hiring young people from the program. Jessica, who had always dreamed of getting a master's degree in education, but never had the means, finally achieved that dream. With Ryan's support, not just financial, but logistical and emotional, she managed to balance her studies with her work at the school and the center. Her thesis on vocational education for underprivileged youth gained national recognition, leading to invitations for speaking engagements and consulting work. Ironically, it was Jessica who ended up becoming a public figure, while Ryan increasingly delegated corporate appearances to his executives. Funny how life turns out, he remarked one evening after watching Jessica in a local TV interview about her work. Me, born for the spotlight, I prefer the auto shop. You, always so reserved, are becoming a national authority on education. I think we complete each other, she replied, kissing him tenderly. You gave me the confidence to aim higher, and I gave you permission to value what truly matters to you. On their third wedding anniversary, they decided to renew their vows, this time with no secrets or omissions. The ceremony took place at the same estate as the first, but now with the Blackwell family, executives from the group, students from the center, teachers from the school, and friends from both of Ryan's lives in attendance. Rebecca Blackwell, elegant as ever, embraced Jessica with genuine affection. You saved my son, she whispered. You gave him back the joy I hadn't seen since he was a child. The celebration was a curious mix. Executives in expensive suits chatting with mechanics with calloused hands, sophisticated socialites mingling with public school teachers, young students from the center serving food alongside international investors. Yet, surprisingly, it worked. You built a bridge between two worlds, observed Amber, who now knew the whole truth about her mechanic friend. I never thought I'd see Mrs. Parker from the corner store swapping recipes with a senator's wife. Jessica laughed, watching the unlikely scene. People are just people in the end. Some just had more opportunities than others. The most emotional moment of the evening came when Ryan announced the expansion of the training center into a national network, starting with 10 cities, all following the same philosophy as Bloomfield. Quality vocational education, combined with academic support and community outreach. This project will no longer be just a local initiative, but a national education and employment policy, he explained to the guests. But Bloomfield will always be our home, our starting point and our inspiration. By his side, Jessica couldn't hold back her tears. She remembered the day her Beetle broke down on the road, how that seemingly trivial event had changed her, life forever. Later, as the party wound down, she found Ryan in the auto shop, still in his formal vow renewal attire, but with his sleeves rolled up, tinkering with the engine of an old car. Can't stay away even on our anniversary, she teased, walking over. This is a special case, he smiled mysteriously. A gift for you. Stepping back, Jessica saw for the first time the vehicle he had been working on. His old Beetle 1978. Fully restored, shining like new but keeping its vintage charm. "You restored my car," she exclaimed, moved. "The car that brought us together deserved special care," he explained, wiping his hands. "Every part was restored or replaced with original ones. The engine is like new, but I kept the originality where it mattered." Jessica ran her fingers over the flawless bodywork, the same light blue she had always loved. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Just like our story. Restored, improved, but still authentic in what truly matters." Ryan hugged her from behind, both gazing at the car that symbolized the beginning of everything. "You know what I still find amazing?" he remarked. "If you hadn't forgotten to change the oil back then, if your car hadn't broken down exactly at that spot on the road, exactly when I was passing by." "It wasn't a coincidence." Jessica turned to face him. "It was fate, or maybe just the world conspiring to bring together two people who complemented each other perfectly." They kissed under the soft glow of the workshop lights, surrounded by the familiar scent of oil and grease that, for them, had become the aroma of home, of belonging. In the years that followed, the balance they found continued to flourish. The Blackwell Group thrived, now with a more humane business philosophy focused on social impact, reflecting the values Ryan and Jessica shared. The Vocational Training Center expanded to dozens of locations across the United States, transforming thousands of lives. Jessica eventually left traditional teaching to dedicate herself fully to developing educational methodologies for the project, which was renamed the Montgomery Blackwell Foundation, symbolically uniting the two worlds that now coexisted in harmony. Ryan continued dividing his time between corporate management and the original auto shop in Bloomfield, which he kept as his idea lab and personal refuge. To many in town, he was still just Mr. Ryan from the shop, and he cherished that simplicity deeply. The couple settled permanently in Bloomfield, in a large yet cozy house on the outskirts of town, with enough space to host family, friends, and collaborators from their various projects. Though they kept an apartment in New York City for work, occasions, it was in the small town that they truly felt at home. One afternoon, 5 years after their wedding, Jessica found Ryan in his home office, absorbed in old photographs and documents. "What are you doing?" she asked, curious. "I found my father's journal," he replied, showing a worn, leather-bound notebook. "I'm discovering things about him I never knew." Jessica sat beside him, intrigued. Ryan rarely spoke of his father, though it was clear he deeply admired him. "What kind of things?" "He lived a double life in a way," Ryan explained, pointing to a passage. "Here he writes about feeling out of place in business meetings, how he preferred spending weekends fixing old cars in the mansion's garage, how he dreamed of having a simple auto shop again someday. Like father, like son," Jessica smiled. "You're more alike than I thought." "There's more." Ryan turned a few pages. "He and my mother met in Bloomfield. She was a teacher at the rural school. He was the mechanic who fixed the town's Jeep. She used to get there. It was the first car he ever fixed professionally." Jessica's eyes widened, surprised by the coincidence. "Your mother never mentioned that." Apparently, it was a special secret between them, something they guarded like a personal treasure, separate from the corporate world they lived in. Ryan seemed moved. "It's as if somehow I followed a path already laid out without knowing it." "Or as if you found your own way back home," Jessica suggested. "Back to your roots, to what truly matters." That night, lying in bed contemplating the future, Ryan confessed, "You know, sometimes I wonder if we made the right choice. If we shouldn't have settled completely in New York City, closer to the group's headquarters. If we're wasting resources by living here." Jessica turned to face him in the dim light of the bedroom. "What is wealth, Ryan? Is it having a bigger bank account than others? Or is it waking up every day happy beside the one you love, doing what gives life meaning?" He smiled, pulling her closer. "When I met you, I thought I was running away from my real life into a temporary fantasy. Now I understand I was finding my true life after years of corporate fantasy. And I thought I'd found a simple mechanic," she laughed softly. "Instead, I found a complex, fascinating man, torn between two worlds but with a whole heart." Dear listener, If you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Time passed, but Jessica and Ryan's story continued to inspire those around them. In Bloomfield, they became not just respected figures, but beloved ones. The combination of everyday simplicity with large-scale social impact projects made them a unique model of how wealth can be used for good when guided by genuine values. The Montgomery Blackwell Training Center's network became a national benchmark in vocational education with over 50 units across the United States. The method Jessica developed, combining technical training with holistic human development, began to be studied in universities and adopted by other initiatives. Ryan, though officially still president of the Blackwell Group, increasingly delegated daily operations to trusted executives, preferring to dedicate himself to innovative and sustainable projects. The company, once focused solely on the automotive sector, diversified into areas like renewable energy and eco-friendly urban mobility. The original auto shop, where it all began, was preserved and incorporated into the first training center, becoming an almost symbolic space. It was there Ryan still went on Saturdays, now accompanied by apprentices, keeping the tradition and art of automotive mechanics alive. One such Saturday, as they worked together on a classic car's engine, one of the young apprentices asked, "Mr. Ryan, is it true you pretended to be poor to win over teacher Jessica?" Ryan laughed, exchanging a knowing glance with Jessica, who was organizing teaching materials in the adjacent office and had heard the question. "No, Michael, I didn't pretend to be poor. I pretended to be just one part of who I was, and I ended up discovering that part, the one I thought was less important, was actually essential to my happiness." "But don't you miss the rich life? The yachts, mansions, all that?" "I never really liked those things," Ryan admitted, adjusting a valve with precision. "And I didn't stop being rich. I just chose to live in a way that values what truly matters. Real wealth is doing what we love beside those we love, making a positive difference in the world." The young man seemed to reflect deeply on this as Jessica approached, smiling in approval. For their 10th wedding anniversary, the couple decided to do something special. They organized a big community celebration in Bloomfield, bringing together people from every phase of their lives. The only condition for the guests was to bring non-perishable food items, which would be donated to local charities. During the celebration, held in the town's central square, Rebecca Blackwell, now a white-haired but still elegant woman, pulled Jessica aside to a quiet corner. "I never properly thanked you," she said, holding her daughter-in-law's hands. "For what, Rebecca?" "For saving my son. Not just your marriage, but for bringing back the essence of who he was, which was getting lost in that cold corporate world. I think we saved each other," Jessica replied, moved. "Before meeting Ryan, I was just a dedicated but lonely teacher, with no big ambitions beyond the classroom. He gave me the confidence to dream bigger, to impact more lives." Rebecca nodded knowingly. "You know what James, his father, always used to say, that life is like an engine. It needs balance between all its parts to run smoothly. Ray found that balance with you." The observation was profoundly true. Both had found the balance between ambition and purpose, between material success and personal meaning, between global impact and local connections. That night, after the celebration, walking hand in hand through the town's illuminated square, Ryan and Jessica reflected on the journey they had taken. "If you could go back," Jessica asked, "would you do anything differently?" Ryan thought for a moment. "I would have been honest with you from the start. I would have trusted that you'd love me for who I am, not for what I have or don't have." "And I would have loved you no matter who you were," she assured him. "Though I'll admit it was fun finding out my mechanic husband was secretly a billionaire. Sounds like something out of a soap opera." They laughed, light and happy as they had been at the start of their romance. "You know what amazes me the most?" Ryan remarked, looking around the quiet little town. "How we found fulfillment in a life many would consider too simple, too ordinary." "There's nothing ordinary about building a life with purpose," Jessica replied. "There's nothing simple about changing lives through education and opportunity." They stopped in front of the old auto shop, now part of the educational complex, but still keeping its original facade and the modest sign, Montgomery Auto Shop. Quality and honesty. This place will always be special, Ryan said, wrapping his arm around Jessica's shoulders. It's where I discovered who I really am. And it's where I learned that sometimes appearances can be deceiving, in the best possible way, she added, resting her head on his shoulder. Their journey continued, facing new challenges and celebrating both big and small victories. The training center's network expanded to other countries in Latin America. The Blackwell Group, under Ryan's visionary leadership and Jessica's humanistic influence, became a global example of how large corporations can align profit with social responsibility. But for the couple, true success always lay in the details, in the joy of a young person landing their first formal job after completing a course at the center, in the spark in Ryan's eyes when he finally restored a particularly challenging engine, in Jessica's pride seeing her former students become teachers in the project's new locations. A decade and a half after their unexpected meeting on that dirt road, Jessica and Ryan had built not just a life together, but a legacy. A legacy based not on fortunes or famous names, but on values, on authentic connections, on transformation, through education and opportunity. In an interview for a business magazine, when asked about the secret to balancing entrepreneurial success with personal happiness, Ryan gave an answer that surprised many, but made perfect sense to those who knew his story. True success isn't about being two different men, the executive and the mechanic in my case. It's about being one man, whole and true to the same values in every setting. I learned that from my wife, who first loved me as the simple man who fixed her car and later embraced my full story with all its complexities. She taught me that wealth without purpose is just accumulation. Power without positive impact is just vanity. Jessica, by his side during the interview, added with her characteristic wisdom, "We all wear masks and play social roles. The secret isn't to eliminate those roles, but to ensure that behind them all there's the same person with the same core values." Ryan didn't have to choose between being the mechanic or the businessman. He needed and succeeded to be authentic in both roles. On the 20th anniversary of the auto shop, now transformed into an educational complex that occupied nearly an entire city block yet retained its original essence, Jessica and Ryan organized a special celebration for the community. Former students came from all over the country, many now established professionals, some even owners of their own businesses. During the party, an elderly man approached Ryan, walking with difficulty, leaning on a cane. "Mr. Ryan, I don't know if you remember me." "Oh, Jack," Ryan exclaimed, recognizing his first customer immediately. "How could I forget? You trusted your Chevy Nova 78 to an unknown mechanic when no one else would." The old man smiled, touched to be remembered. "I followed your journey, son, from afar, not wanting to intrude. I saw when the truth about your identity came out, saw the empire you built with these training centers. But you know what impresses me most?" "What, old Jack?" "That you never stopped being who you were when you first came here. You still have the same respect for others, the same genuine humility. That's rare, you know, especially among the wealthy." Ryan felt his eyes well up at the simple yet profound compliment. "Thank you, old Jack. That means a lot to me." Jessica, who had been watching the scene closely, stepped forward and wrapped her arm around her husband's waist. "He's right, you know," she remarked after the old man walked away. "You've grown so much, as a person, as a leader, as a visionary, but you never lost the essence of the man I fell for on that roadside." The night continued with shared stories, laughter, and a few emotional tears. It was a celebration not just of the auto shop or the educational projects it had birthed, but of a journey of self-discovery, authenticity, and love that transcended social differences and conventional expectations. When they finally arrived, home exhausted but fulfilled, Ryan surprised Jessica with a small box. "Another gift," she smiled, curious. "I thought we agreed no material presents this year." "This one's special," he insisted. "Open it." Inside the box was an old key, rusted and worn by time. "It's the original key to the auto shop," he explained. "I've kept it all these years as a talisman. It represents the moment I decided to take a chance on a different, more authentic life. The moment that, without knowing it, led me to you. Jessica held the key with reverence, understanding the deep meaning of that simple object. We're all like this key, aren't we? She reflected. Small tools that, in the right hands and at the right time, can open doors to whole worlds of possibilities. Ryan nodded, pulling her close. And the biggest door this key opened was the one to my heart, which was locked until I met you. That key became a personal symbol for the couple, representing not just the auto shop or their shared past, but the idea that the simplest things often hide the most valuable treasures. Just like a seemingly ordinary mechanic concealed an extraordinary man, and an elementary school teacher carried within her the heart of an educational visionary, years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and joys. The Blackwell Group evolved into a conglomerate focused on sustainable innovation. The Montgomery Blackwell Training Centers network became a global benchmark for transformative education. But for Jessica and Ryan, their greatest achievement remained the balance they'd found between ambition and contentment, between global impact and local connections, between the simplicity of everyday life and the complexity of their large-scale projects. On a quiet afternoon, sitting on the porch of their home in Bloomfield, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, Jessica voiced a thought she'd been nurturing. You know what our story has taught me over all these years? What? Ryan asked, holding her hand. That life isn't about choosing between being simple or sophisticated, between tradition or innovation, between local or global. It's about weaving all those aspects into a full and authentic existence. Ryan smiled, recognizing the deep wisdom in her words. Like a well-tuned engine, he added, where every part has its role, but it's the harmonious whole that creates true power. Exactly, she agreed. And the fuel that makes it all work is love, he finished, pulling her closer. The love that gives us the courage to be authentic, to reveal ourselves completely, to accept each other in our entirety. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, leaving a trail of stars beginning to dot the sky. In the small town, lights flickered on, creating a warm glow. Jessica rested her head on Ryan's shoulder, feeling profound gratitude for all the events, expected and unexpected, planned and accidental, that had brought them there. Who would have thought, she murmured, that a broken-down beetle on the side of the road could change so many lives? It wasn't the beetle. Ryan kissed the top of her head tenderly. It was you, with your courage to trust, to love, to start over, even when you discovered you'd been deceived. And it was you, she replied, with your sincere search for authenticity, for real connection, for a life that meant more than zeros in a bank account. In that peaceful moment under the starry sky of Bloomfield, Jessica and Ryan realized their story, with all its unexpected twists, had become something bigger than themselves. It had turned into a symbol, an example, an inspiration. Proof that appearances often deceive, but the heart, when guided by true values, rarely leads astray. That a person's real worth isn't in what they own, but in what they build and share. That genuine love doesn't just accept, but celebrates the whole person, with all their complexities and contradictions, and perhaps most importantly, proof that it's never too late to reinvent yourself, to embrace the different facets of who you are, to build a life that truly reflects what matters to you. The future would keep bringing challenges, changes, and opportunities. But Jessica and Ryan would face them all together, strengthened by a love built on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine admiration. A love that had begun unexpectedly on the dusty road of a small town, but had proven more precious than any fortune. The end of the story. And to you who followed this journey all the way here, we'd like to ask, what did you think of Jessica and Ryan's story? Have you ever been in a situation where appearances were deceiving but for the better? Leave your comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next heartwarming stories of love, resilience, and new beginnings.